Then you had Laurie making pranks.
That was one of my favorite parts in the original, and they don't often adapt that, but they did in my introduction to Little Women, which was the cartoon from Japan in the 80s. I distinctly remember the episode where Laurie is doing the back and forth letters. And one of the reasons I remember it is because they changed the name on the paper. They called him Carl or something. When the people were speaking, they said John. And then when they show the letter in the cartoon, it says like Carl or Kevin or something at the bottom. And my friend and I would always rewind it, and the character says, as she's reading it, your servant John Brooks or something, but it clearly says a different name. And my friend and I always thought that was hilarious, so we'd rewind that part in the tapes that my grandma would tape for us. So I distinctly remember this prank part, and it's never in the movies, and I'm always disappointed. So I wanted to make sure that I adapted the prank of the fake letters to and from Meg and John. Only now it's 2021, so it was texting, of course.
Mm-hmm. When I read your book, I thought this is the language is something that I could imagine him to use. He wrote in a way that Meg could recognize that wasn't written by John.
Yeah.
But it's worse in the original because Meg actually thinks that the letters came from John, and she even replies to them.
Yeah.
So it's really a vicious thing that he does in the original, but nobody speaks about it. Well, I do, but nobody else really seems to do that.
There's a few parts that really stuck out to me, either from the cartoon or the original book when I was younger, that like have stayed with me. And now when I read it, I get to that part, I'm like, oh, that's one of my favorite parts. And they don't often pick it to do the adaptations. Like, one of my other favorite parts is the Amy and the art fair. So I made sure to put the art fair in my fourth book, which is the Amy book. But they never have the whole art fair debacle with the rival artist who gets her table. And it really shows how she's grown as a character, because she handles that disappointment pretty classy.
Yeah.
Whereas Amy from the first book, Little Women, rather than Good Wives, or is that in I can't remember. The younger Amy definitely would have not handled that well. She would have kicked up a fit and freaked out, and older Amy was very gracious, and I always liked that part, and they never put that in any of the adaptations. The pranks and the art fair are the two big ones I can think of that I wanted to make sure got in there. So
that is the benefit of creating your own version, that you can add the things that you want to have there.
True.
Another thing that they never add is the symposium with Joe and Frederick, which is one of my favorites in the novel.
Is that in the Winona Ryder one?
There's something similar when they meet and they have the discussion about philosophy.
Yeah. And he kind of cuts in and says he thinks women should be able to tell their opinions. Yeah, but it's just like a 30-second scene probably. Yeah, you're right. They never do put that in. Oh, yeah, in the 1994 film, they kind of show that, but yeah, you're right. They never show it in full. And I think that's the only one I can remember having it in.
Yeah.
The symposium part.
In the 2017, he invites her to the symposium, but then they don't include the symposium, and it makes me so angry.
Is that the miniseries?
Yeah, the miniseries.
Like PBS one, like it was two or three episodes or something. Yeah, I liked that one. I've only seen it once though, so I don't remember that one as well as some of the others.
Oh, the Hollywood people bring the symposium to the Little Women adaptations, please. And thinking about the art fair, I think they should also include that or something like that, because if I remember right, there are these moments there where Amy and Laurie are a bit flirtatious. in the book.
Mhm.
Why that is not in the movie?
I don't know. Well, I mean, I've always said they need to do a good old fashioned, like we were talking about North and South, 80s miniseries where it goes on for like 6 or 7 days for 2 hours a day. They need to do something like that with Little Women because it's such a massive book and 90 minutes or 2 hours just isn't enough time. I mean, I had trouble putting everything in to 4 different books that I wanted to fit in. Some things had to just fall by the wayside. And that was 4 different books. So I'm sure that the time restraints make it so that they can't. But man, wouldn't it be great to have an actual long mini series that you can fit all these fun little lesser known scenes into?
I would love that. And I have the whole idea that they should include like Laurie's point of view and then Friedrich's point of view and his life in Berlin. Oh, I'd love that.
That would be fun. That was something that was fun about writing the book. I ended up doing 8 viewpoints in the end, 2 per book. So it was kind of funny to write from the John point of view or the Laurie point of view or the Friedrich, because I think we mainly get Joe's and then a little bit of Meg and Amy in the original.
Yeah.
But not, it's all kind of under the lens of Louisa May Alcott, which is great. She's a great writer, but it kind of all, I don't know, it was like all under one viewpoint. And I always kind of wondered, what these other characters thought. What does Beth think about being the peacemaker of the family? Is it exhausting? Or is it, oh, someone's coming into my room. Sorry.
It's all right.
My husband and my cat just walked in, so just wait a minute.
Waving back. I was thinking about them.
Hello, friends. It is Niina from the Little Woman podcast. Just to let you all know that the Little Woman podcast episode transcripts are now available as books. You can find them as paperbacks and ebooks. They are wonderful reading for all the fans of Louisa May Alcott. You can find all the links from the description. And now, back to the show.
The 1949 film, there's this moment where Laurie is like, why do you need to work, Joe? Do you need money? I have lots of money. Like, he doesn't really understand why the girls have to work. And
right.
I think I saw some of that in your book as well, because Laurie is unproductive and he's lazy because everything has been handed over to him.
He doesn't have to work and he doesn't have to really try for anything. And I think when you grow up like that, you don't really understand. You can't really comprehend that there is another way of life for other people.
I liked your book because it showed clearly that how John is blown away when he enters the Lawrence home, and then he lives in the trailer park. He's really poor. But I think in the original book, it does mention how the girls are really poor and how John is very poor. But sometimes I feel like the modern readers don't really pay that much attention to the differences.
It's hard for us to realize, because as modern readers, we see, oh, they have a maid, or oh, so they don't have a carriage. Well, big deal. I bet a lot of people didn't have carriages, but it's hard for us to get what the constructs of the social class were back then, because to us it's all foreign.
And most of us come from middle class families.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to put yourself into that position because you don't see that in your everyday life.
Whereas for us now, it might be like, oh, your family can't afford a car, or tech. Tech is a big thing, probably. So I tried to put it in terms that people would understand nowadays, like, oh, you can't afford a phone or that kind of thing. It is hard for us to immerse ourselves in the world of the 1800s and to know what would show that you had money or didn't, or that is a tough thing to figure out as we're reading the original.
I also understood why John had to lie about his background, because when you were in high school, you don't want to stand out too much from the crowd, I think.
Right.
Like
no one wants to really be different.
Yeah, you want to blend in and not have people pay too much attention to you. In your version, John and Meg, they meet in the drama class.
Oh yeah, that's another thing that they don't adapt very much. That Meg really wanted to be an actress and she loved acting. And they'll show like Joe's plays and the Christmas scene where all the kids fall through the couch because there's too many people sitting there and Amy's messing up her lines and not fainting right. But they don't really center around the fact that Meg was really into acting. So I tried to kind of put that in.
They show bits of their plays in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the 1994 film, they do mention that in 19th century, being an actor, it was seen a bit suspicious as a career. When I read some of these books that Louisa May Alcott liked to read, like Wilhelm Meister and like other German type of literature, Goethe, he criticizes life of actor. Google logged me out and I had to log in.
Oh no, jeez, come on, Google. Don't you know that people want to talk about Little Women for more than 40 minutes at a time?
Yeah. They should know my habits already.
Yeah, they should.
Louisa May Alcott, she sometimes kind of criticizes actors' life, like in Joe's Boys. I think Maggie's still like acting, but she still prefers to be mom and doing those homely things. But I was thinking maybe it's because of that sort of bad reputation that the actors had back then. Maybe that's why she didn't become a full-time actor.
Maybe. I mean, it's still not something that like a parent would be thrilled to hear. I want to be an actor.
My mom wasn't very happy when I said I want to go to art school.
One of our kids wants to go to art school.
My sister, she's an actress in an improvisation theater.
Oh, okay.
But she never wanted to make that her full-time job.
Right. As like a fun thing that you do.
Yeah. It's like a creative outlet for her.
Yeah. Oh, so, I get it. Because with writing, when it was just a hobby, I always had ideas and couldn't wait to sit down and write. And now that I'm trying to, make a writing career, and you look at the numbers and the money, and sometimes it can be a little daunting to sit down and actually come up with something because it's just so much more pressure. I think that's why it's taken me this long to finally, after finishing the March Sisters series, get back into really the groove of writing. I had several months where I was organizing my house and purging things from the closet and scraping paint off of our outbuildings so we could paint them. And a lot of that was, avoiding having to sit down and come up with another world. So I get that. It's hard when your artistic endeavors merge with career.
Meg is not the only one who have these questions, because then we have Jo, who really struggles with her writing career. In the second part of the books. She wrote those trashy novels. And then when Fredrik came, she started to take herself more seriously as a writer.
It's hard to find a balance between write to market and writing, what you really love to write and what you feel drawn to writing. But if you're going to make a career out of it, it has to sell. So yeah, it's not something just from Joe's time. It definitely influenced me wanting to change genres and do the young adult romance because it's popular. The key is finding something that's popular that you really want to write, like Little Women adaptations. It was so much fun that I didn't mind doing a popular genre.
When you enjoy it, that's the best part. In 19th century, if you were an actor, and then if you would like to combine that with a family, that might not have been so easy.
I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure those kinds of careers are hard now too, and we have, more quicker and more reliable forms of transportation, and we have the internet, and we have Zoom, and I'm sure it seems like it's really hard now, but I can't imagine back then when they didn't have any of these forms of communication and travel, it would have been almost impossible for someone like Meg to have a family and a acting career.
Sometimes I come across these people who complain that Meg doesn't become an actress. When I read the book, I don't think she's that much into acting. I think she cared more about having a family.
Yeah, I think so too. And also, how many times do we say as a kid, oh, I'm going to be an actor, or I'm going to be an astronaut, or I'm going to be a whatever. And most of us, when we're older, don't end up being an actor or an astronaut or some lofty goal that very few people in this world actually end up doing. So
I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Oh, that sounds really fun. I have a friend who actually is an archaeologist, but she's the only one I know who is.
Yeah. And I was really very close to applying to university to go to study archaeology, but I ended up going to art school.
Okay.
But, maybe someday I could go back.
Either one sounds good. Yeah, you definitely could.
Yeah, if I would want to, but not so much now.
Yeah.
I still like history, and doing this podcast, that's one of those things. Like when you're a history nerd, this is a really good podcasting to do. Louisa May Alcott's life.
And what you do is kind of like archaeology because you're looking into all these sources and, with Louisa May Alcott's letters and all the things written about her. And okay, now what were the times like?
When you read the original, you said he was funny, but then also annoying. I think there is some kind of this sort of thin line when funny becomes a bit annoying. Yeah. Especially when you're a teenager.
Yeah, I think so. There is a fine line between being funny and crazy and goofy and taking things too far. And I think especially with teenagers, it's easy to cross that line, especially when you're with your friends or there's people you want to impress. We all have that one friend that we can really get into trouble with. And I think that was Joe and Laurie were each other's one friend.
And it's funny in the original when he's composing the opera in Vienna after Joe has rejected him. There's this moment when he calls Joe a torment. And I was like, when you call her a torment, why are you pinning on her?
Right.
For that, I think it was the art fair chapter. There's this moment when Laurie is really frustrated when Joe is preaching him about about college.
Yeah, because he kind of he was like going to gambling rooms or whatever and being wild.
Sometimes it's just mind-blowing to me that people want Joe and Laurie together because
I know
Laurie has a crush on Joe, but then he also thinks Joe is a torment, and he is so annoyed with Joe. Laurie doesn't like Joe always that much. I think there was some kind of a need to have Joe in his life because he needed someone to tell him what to do with his life.
Yeah.
But when I was reading your book, I thought it was interesting because there were some moments when John makes these observations that Laurie goes to do these things that Joe wants to do, that he doesn't want to do himself.
Because he just wants to, be with her and do stuff she wants to do.
He watched films that won Academy Awards.
Yeah, the movies that she wanted to watch that he thought were stupid.
Stuff like that. And it was very close to the book. I kind of feel sad for Laurie because I felt like he was wasting his time on Joe. Then I feel bad for Joe because he was really like pinning on her when she didn't want his attention.
Yeah, it's not romantic. There's not much romantic about their relationship. That's why I loved that cartoon, because they were very clearly friends and had like a brother and sister kind of relationship, and they fought in that cartoon. And I remember a scene where Laurie gets mad at her and comes into his house and is like kind of huffing and puffing and like throws his hat at the door, and it clearly shows that they drive each other crazy but are still very dear friends, which, you know, is pretty common with a close friend, brother, sister kind of relationship. But yeah, so when I was watching the movies as a teenager or a kid, I didn't understand that either. Like, why? Because from what I had read and seen in the cartoon, I'm like, why is this like a love thing when they never really were?
One of my friends said that it's not really a love thing. It's actually Laurie that he just wants to have sex with her.
Oh,
maybe there is some of that.
But I think it was more, I mean, maybe, I don't know, but I think it was more like he just felt like he belonged in the family and loved the whole family. And nowadays you can be an add-on to a family in any way, shape, or form, but in those times, I think you added on by getting married. And so that was kind of the logical progression.
Because when Laurie proposes Joe, it feels like he feels a lot more immature than Joe in that scene. Because he says these things like, I gave up billiards and all to be with you.
Yeah, he gets a little silly there.
It's a really funny line when he says that. It's such a bad reason for Joe to marry him, that he just wants to like play house with her.
Yeah, and it shows how he's grown up and been handed everything. So he's like, well, but I did this. That was probably a lot of work for him. Wow, I gave this up. I gave something up. This is big stuff. And she's not reacting the way he thought she would. Everything else is, I want this. Okay, here you go.
Yeah.
And I think he didn't know what to do or how to act when he doesn't get the thing he says he wants.